Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and wherever you're going. Welcome to the Dierks and Denver Podcast. We're here today on April the 7th. It's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We've had a full day and some change to fully digest what we watched in the national championship game Monday night. The Final Four and that game are going to be our primary focus. As always, I'm here with my best friend and co-host, Denver. And before we get into it today, you already know I have to ask. Denver, how are we today?
I'm good, man. I got to watch a great Final Four this weekend. National championship game was fun for me at least. And now I'm here, and it's a pretty good day.
That's wonderful to hear. We're just going to get right into it today. By now, if you've followed this journey and you're a college basketball fan, you already know, as I throw it up onto the screen, the Baylor Bears are your 2021 men's college basketball national champion.
Woot woot.
This is the winner that Denver had in his bracket, so congratulations to Denver. Round of applause.
Applauding myself.
And man, it transpired in a way that maybe not many thought it might, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Of course, we're gonna quickly go back to the beginning, the Final Four games on Saturday afternoon, and take care of those real quick. Denver, your initial thoughts while I pull up these stats that I forgot to pull up at the beginning.
Initial thoughts on the Final Four games?
The Final Four games. Start with Baylor Houston.
I thought Baylor played insanely well. They made it felt like they made quick work of Houston. Like they came out, they played. They were like, "We're the dominant team. We're gonna show you we're the dominant team," type of thing. I think the 3-point shooting for Baylor helped. I helped on both nights, but it was very evident to me against Houston. And really, it didn't feel like a game. And I think that was like the most shocking thing to me was it did not feel like Houston from the gate had a chance. And I know that's really wild
No,
to say.
I completely agree with you. I mean, Marcus Sasser, the guard, I mean, if he doesn't, I think he had 17 of their 20 first half points. Like if he's not making threes, I mean, he made 5 threes in the first half. If he's not making those threes, I mean, Houston had zero offense. Like zero.
Yep.
It could have been very, very bad. That's not quite indicative of how good Houston is as a team. They obviously probably would have wanted to play much, much better. But this game was well and truly over at halftime. I mean,
Yeah.
the Bears, you could see in the second half, I mean, the Bears just kind of kicked it into cruise control. They were not going quite as hard, not trying to, run up the score or anything. Once they had their big lead, they're like, let's just sit on this, save the legs a little bit for Monday night because they knew they were going to be in for a battle.
Yeah.
And so that's the way that went down. Baylor absolutely decimating Houston. And this 78-59 score, that honestly, it feels like it could have been about 40. This felt like about a 40-point game. It was rough to watch. And then the other semifinal, this was, for my money, this was the game of the tournament.
Yeah.
In terms of entertainment value, this was a spectacular basketball game.
This is honestly, everyone knows my college basketball knowledge is not very good in the first place. So for me, this is the best game I've ever seen. It was something that shocked me with how well UCLA played, shocked me how bad the Bulldogs I felt played. Like they played well, don't get me wrong, but I think they didn't play that great. There's a difference. They played good, not great, and it showed because they have never been tested like this. UCLA came out and they said, "We're gonna dog you guys. We're gonna come out and play our freaking hardest, and it was so amazing to watch.
I'm going to disagree with you ever so slightly. Gonzaga, I mean, if you score 93 points in a college basketball game, you're doing a lot of things right. Like, you're doing a lot of things right. Gonzaga still played pretty well in this game. What it came down to for me is Mick Cronin, the head coach of UCLA, his
Mhm.
game plan and the execution of said game plan was legitimately flawless. Like, it was the closest thing to a perfect game of basketball that you could have ever expected UCLA to play. Now, we've already talked a little bit about UCLA is not your typical 11 seed, obviously, right? They come from a power conference. They have a lot of good players on that team. They just kind of, especially down the stretch, they struggled a little bit. Their seeding fell. So ignore the seeding number next to UCLA's name, and just look at what the on court product tells you, right? Because that's a lot more telling. UCLA
Juzang,
just they played in a way that the old dogs of UCLA, the ones that won the was it like 11 consecutive national titles or whatever it was, 8 consecutive, I don't remember the exact number, but they would have been proud because even with the amount of talent UCLA has, you definitely could say that they were the underdog. It 100% is the truth, but they had what it takes to win this game. Even though I think you play this game, if this was a series, I think Gonzaga wins the series fairly handily, because can you really expect UCLA to play that perfect of a game, back to back to back to I don't know that you can. But that's the beauty of this tournament. That's what makes this tournament so entertaining, is if you can have teams put together a really quality 40 minutes of basketball, or in this case 45 because we saw it go to overtime, you can see some wild things happen.
my only thing is, in my head and in my heart, I do not think Gonzaga should have won this game. I think the last second bank shot from Jalen Suggs was the luckiest thing that could have happened, and it
Can we
was lucky.
pause on that just a second? Because I want to put some respect on Jalen Suggs' name. Now, I will say, is it a lower percentage shot? Absolutely. He's 30 to 35 feet from the bucket, and he's on the run. But if you're going to tell me that shot was all luck, one, I don't think that you've ever played a game of basketball before, and I know that's not true for you, so I want you to rethink this. That was not like it was some baseball-ass pass from 90 feet. That was a shot where he was square to the bucket, and he didn't two-hand push the shit. He didn't overhand toss it like it was a football or a baseball. He shot that basketball. Now, obviously, you're not going to take a 30 to 35 foot shot in the regular flow of the game unless you're Steph Curry or Damian Lillard. But to say that that was a lucky shot only, I completely disagree with.
I don't. Okay, to me, it was a lucky shot that went in. Look, I get the concept of what you're trying to explain to me. My personal feeling, though, is he got very lucky winning. I think that's what I think. I think he got very lucky winning. I understand he squared positioning, normal shot, totally understandable. But I called you, man. It was the craziest game I'd ever watched.
It was an
Like,
incredible game,
overall.
capped by one of the best shots that you're probably ever going to see in an NCAA tournament game.
And before we continue, I heard it a lot yesterday. I heard it a lot that night. Timmy stepping into that charge really saved them, and Timmy deserves a lot of credit
Okay,
for what
this is
he did.
important. Yes. Do you think that was a charge?
Do I think it was a charge?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I 100% agree. That was, for the people that say that's not a charge, you you've got to go take a more critical look at this. Juzang, well, one, what you already said is true. Timmy was in position. He was set. His 2 feet were on the ground, and he was outside of the restricted area. And then 2, Juzang cross-bodied the man.
Yeah.
You're telling me this man was under control? He was almost 90 degrees tilted, flying at him. He was out of control. That was the correct call by the refs. I know that you don't want to see the game really kind of, the regulation anyway, end on a charge block call. That's terrible. No one wants to see that. But like in this situation, you had to call something, right? If the refs would have swallowed the whistle right there, this would have been just catastrophic. People would have been grilling the refs forever. That was the correct call, though. We got to give big props to the refs for making the right call in a very, very, bang bang tough decision like that. But then I do have to say, I'm gonna go back to it again. He's fortunate. Jalen Suggs is fortunate the shot went in. Yes. However, I'm going to also point out UCLA only had just tied the game. So it's not like that shot is the difference between UCLA winning the game or losing the game. Like the game was going to a second overtime. Was it Jules Bernard was the Bruin who had just fouled out?
Yes.
Late in the game or early in overtime. I can't exactly remember when. UCLA was still fighting an uphill battle. If that game goes another 5 minutes, it's still really anyone's game. But the longer that game went on, I felt the less likely it was UCLA was going to win because they had a lot of people in foul trouble. Now, I think Timmy also had 4 fouls, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But I thought Riley had 4 as well. This is my fault. They weren't quite as bad as I thought. But I knew Timmy did. But realistically, Gonzaga was still in a fairly good spot here. UCLA just gave him a hell of a game. You got to give him mad props to UCLA. Are we ready to move forward to what was?
I am.
Also, I think we have to play it, right? We have to play the highlight. Just for the call, for no other reason. Jim Nance and Bill Raftery, great on the call. My tweet, the bank is open awful late. You love this. Again, Denver called me right after the game. We had a wild moment there. This was just great. Great little sequence here.
Look, you wanted. Absolutely. Good job screening out again. Bruins with a shot to tie it or win it. With 12 seconds. Juzang. Again with the ball in his hands. In the paint. Floater. Short. Got it back. Ties it with 3. Gonzaga has time to do something. Suggs for the win. Oh, yes! Oh, yes! Unbelievable! The perfect season remains on
right here.
Are you? Oh, my God. There is. There are onions, Jim, and then there are major onions with a kiss. Oh, my goodness.
I love Bill Raftery. There are onions. And then there are major onions with a kiss. I'm going to say it again. You can tell by that shot. He was trying to bank that shot in. So if you're going, he did exactly what he was trying to do. I'll leave it at that. And now we move on. Before we get to the title game, we got to put some respect on the ladies' game. I don't know if you caught any of this. I watched this whole thing. The ladies' national title game on Sunday evening was a banger. Ended up being much more suspenseful than the men's title game, which we'll get into in a minute. But Stanford and Coach Tara Vandiver won their first title since '92 in a 1-point win over Arizona. Arizona had a shot at the buzzer to win the game, just couldn't quite fall. Mad respect to both of those teams. It was a great game to watch. And I had to get that shout out in there. I don't know if you want to make any comment based on what you did or did not see of this game.
Congrats to the Stanford Cardinals. I did not watch the game on Sunday. I was doing something else. But congrats for them. They earned it, sounds like. I saw the final play where the Arizona like point guard, I think, she was like triple teamed and took the shot. I think maybe, you know, if you see two people on you, maybe you look for an open person or try to pass it out. But that's my, you know, I'm not gonna criticize or
She's their
anything.
best player. I think you live and die with whatever look she gets in that situation. But
She was guarded up by three people.
Oh, 100%.
Don't live and die.
I'm not
Don't
saying
live
it was
and
the
die by
highest
that.
quality shot, but I think you live and die with the fact that she was the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year and like a All-American. I think you live and die with that. I think you're okay. You know, it didn't go in. That sucks, but big respect to Ari McDonald and the Arizona Wildcats. They said it. Nobody expected them to be here. I don't know if you heard about this controversy, right? The women's Final Four on Friday night. The NC, I don't know if it's ESPN or the NCAA, they released like the hype video for the Final Four. Arizona wasn't in the hype video. You need 4 teams in the hype video. That's it. 4. And one of the 4 teams that made the Final Four was not featured one time in the hype video. What is occurring in regards to the women's tournament? We saw the major F up by the NCAA at the beginning, giving the ladies something that you'd find, you know, in the back room, probably in like the back room of a damn Radio Shack, might have a better workout room than the ladies had to start this tournament. That was absolutely bogus. And I'm just gonna say it. I hate criticizing officials. The officiating in the women's tournament was fucking whack, man. Pardon my language. There was some awful calls in this. It sucks when you see good games that like have critical moments decided by some BS stuff, man. I remember there was an opening round game. I want to say it was like a 2 versus 15. Was it Troy and Texas A&M? For some reason that rings a bell. And like Texas A&M should have been called for an over and back at the very end of the game, which would have given Troy the ball with like 5 seconds left in the game. They were only down a point with a chance to upset the 2 seed. And instead, the refs must have just had their eyes closed, and then they called a foul once A&M had the ball back over the midcourt line. That was whack. We saw at the end of the UConn Baylor Elite 8 game, there was definitely a foul on that play that was just lost to the ether. There was some just dumb shit. The officials have to be better. It's just as simple as that. There was a kicked ball in this game down the stretch. I tweeted about it. I know I did. I'm sorry, this is a tangent, but we need higher standard, right? Yes. There was a kicked ball. The Stanford player kicked the shit straight out of bounds. It was like they were playing soccer. And they called the kicked ball on the Arizona player. I was like, what is occurring?
What is occurring?
It's just terrible stuff. You hate to see it. But yes, overall, spectacular women's tournament as well. I was so happy we got to see both of these tournaments played in their full capacity. You know, I missed this last year.
I can tell.
And without further ado, we get into it. The final game of the college basketball season, men's or women's. The men's national title game. And Baylor simply took care of business. 86-70 over Gonzaga. And really, Gonzaga made 2 good runs at it down the stretch to make it feel like it was getting close, but even at 16 points, it feels like this isn't truly indicative of how well Baylor played in this game. Baylor really, really took it to them. And it was spectacular to watch. Whether you were, unless you were probably like a true blue Gonzaga fan, but if you were just a fan of the game, you followed the game all season, like myself. You know this, Denver. I'm just a fan of the game of college basketball. I love this shit.
Fan of the game.
For the love of the game. And this was, honestly, it was very surprising to me, the manner in which Baylor came out with this one. But absolutely a ton of respect for Scott Drew and the Baylor Bears, the 2021 men's national champions.
Yeah, I correctly predicted them yet again. I want to point that out to
to
the folks at home. I missed the first 2.5 minutes of this game, and when I turned on the game,
he missed the game. Pretty much is what he's saying, folks.
And when I turned it on, it was like 14-2 or something like that, and I was like, "How in the hell?" And then I just watched the rest of the game. As you do, you know. Baylor dominated. They played aggressive. They played with heart and passion. They were dogs. There was a treat at the end of this game, and they played like rabid dogs. They said, "Hey, we want this at the end." And I said it from the beginning. There's something about this Gonzaga team that I just couldn't ever pick to win the tourney. I did two write-in brackets at work. I did not pick Gonzaga in either one of them. I did the full one here and then the round of 16 one. I just couldn't get it. They came out, they played flat, Gonzaga did. They looked like they were winded and tired. Because
that is something I want to hit on. And I don't recall, because again, it's been a couple of years. The thing that got me is I always thought that if the top overall seed made it to the Final Four, they got the first Final Four game, so that their game was done first. They had more time to recover. Obviously, the way we saw it go down, Baylor only played. They played the early game, and they really only had to play half of that game. So Baylor was remarkably fresh. I think they would have played with the same intensity regardless, right? But you had one team that was not really pushed in the Final Four game, and they played the earlier of the two time slots. They had just, quite frankly, more time to recover. And I don't want to attribute that. I'm not trying to make excuses for Gonzaga, but that was one thing that came to my mind was,
I dispute that argument. I don't think that's a valid argument.
I wanted to. I just could not fathom how Gonzaga came out as flat as they did. And like I said, I'm not arguing that that's 100% the facts. I was trying to rationalize it, and that's literally the only thing I could think of as to why Gonzaga looked as flat as they did to start this game.
Here, what is my interpretation of why they came out so flat? Just, they felt flat all game. But to me, it was less about when they played on Saturday and more about the mentality I feel they had going into this game. Now, I just look at Gonzaga as that. I'm not trying to sound any alarms. Let me phrase this well. They remind me of like a preppy Christian school that's really good. They remind me of O'Gorman, right? O'Gorman was good forever.
Yep.
Like they played well every season in every sport. But like there was just something about them that like made me like just feel as, hey, we're gonna, and this is how I feel about Gonzaga. Hey, we're gonna go in, we're gonna, be the preppy school. We're undefeated. We had a hard game on Saturday, but maybe that was just an lucky game for off game for us, lucky game for them type of situation. Baylor can't touch us.
I dispute that. I don't think that was the mindset at all.
I do because these two
coaches are like best friends. There's no way Coach Few would let his players think you're gonna run over these guys. There is absolutely no way in shit.
Well, yeah, you're right. There's no way the coach can, but the coach doesn't make these guys think.
But these guys are all gonna be, most of them anyway, are gonna be future professionals anyway. You're not thinking like that. I 100% No, you're not thinking like that. Especially to go against what you said even further, especially after the game that UCLA gave you. You now know that teams with guards that can make shots really can make your life hard. There is no way, especially I'm going to guess that they had more respect in their mind for Baylor than they did for UCLA. There is no way they came into this thinking it was going to be a cakewalk. I'll let you finish, and then I'm going to give you what I think actually was the case.
The only way I dispute that is what comes to my brain when you tell me things like that is Timmy. I don't like Timmy.
I know you don't.
I don't. And it's because of his demeanor during these games. He makes a dunk in this game and does the thing, and he's down. I'm gonna jump in
while you're down. I was gonna bring this up later, but this is the perfect time. I almost sent out a tweet about this. Timmy is doing it 1,000,000% not to be a cocky asshole, but to be a troll. If you listen to his post-game interviews, that is 100%. He literally is saying he's out here just trying to have fun. He's out here trying to troll people. And part of me thinks that that's kind of funny, right? But in regards to the play Denver is referencing, Gonzaga was down. It was probably round about a dozen or so at this point, as they were most of the game. And Timmy gets a dunk and does the thing where he strokes his mustache and then kind of flares out his arms. And I almost sent out a tweet. No bullshit. I'm like, while I don't like that he does it per se, I have mad respect for Timmy for doing that down 15 because that's brand consistency and it's completely underrated.
I hated it so much. Like, I guess I just don't like Gonzaga. I don't like them, and no one can change my mind.
That's okay. And I had a feeling you were going to come in here with this energy, and I'm not trying to be Gonzaga's white knight, but at the same time I am here for a little bit. We're going to get into Baylor because they deserve a very lengthy conversation themselves, but we'll start with the losing team so that we can end with the winning team, if that's agreeable with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some tweets I'm going to pull up that I think need to be talked about because I saw a fair amount on both sides, but I knew I was going to see a lot of Gonzaga slander after this game. Now, I think you can criticize the way they played in the national title game as much as you want. That is completely fair. They would expect you to because, quite frankly, I think they know that they played nowhere near where they are capable of playing, and they should be criticized. However, if you're going to come out and say that one performance in the national title game when they are already 31-0 is indicative of their entire season, you are out of your goddamn mind.
Wow, that was some intensity right there.
This tweet from Mid-Major Madness, there's going to be several that have a very similar tone to them. I'll just read through them real quick, and then we can have a discussion here, Denver. I don't know. Again, this is from Mid-Major Madness on Twitter. I don't know who needs to hear this, but Gonzaga can lose by 60 tonight, and it will have nothing to do with the conference it plays in. They got a reply to that tweet from some random guy that I'm not even going to read off their name to not give them the attention. He said Gonzaga hadn't been really tested this season until 2 nights ago. It's obvious they were still drained from that game to start tonight. Playing more games against high-quality opponents will lead to being tested more, thus helping them in a situation like this. And Mid-Major Madness had a very good clapback, in my opinion. They weren't tested, Gonzaga. The they in this is Gonzaga, obviously. They weren't tested because they beat the shit out of every good team they played. It's not like, obviously, Gonzaga really can't pick the conference they're in, right? They're in the WCC. Now, the WCC is obviously not the Big 12. It is not the Big 10. It is not the ACC. That is very, very simple to understand. However, Gonzaga doesn't schedule cupcakes in the non-con. They went out and they scheduled Kansas. They scheduled West Virginia. They had Baylor on the non-con schedule this year. They played Virginia and Iowa in the non-conference. They're playing traditional elite programs, and they beat the freaking piss out of all of them. So to think that this is Gonzaga just simply isn't good enough to compete with a team from the Big 12 is a ludicrous thought to me. Again, this is from Aaron Torres. This isn't a Gonzaga is overrated sort of situation. This is a Baylor is that damn good sort of situation. I believe I had one more that's very similar to what I just read from Aaron Torres from Jerry Brewer. If Baylor's lead holds, the lazy storyline will be that undefeated history-chasing Gonzaga was too overhyped, blah, blah, blah. The real story is Baylor, a close number 2 all season. I feel like that got forgotten a lot in this, right? That Baylor was legitimately thought of as the second or third best team in the country all season long. Is undeniably great. The Zags didn't really choke. They're getting choked. You have to recognize the difference. I'll get into the next one after a bit here, but we can now talk about some of the stuff that I just brought up and see how you land on it as someone who's fairly new to the college basketball scene.
Okay, so let's start off with that tweet, the second tweet
Okay.
that you got out. I get that Gonzaga destroyed elite teams outside of conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they played a considerable few, like good teams. I think in my head, they played those teams. How many? It was like 7 teams, like a third of their season.
Let's see. They beat Kansas, West Virginia, Iowa, and Virginia in the regular season, and then in the tournament alone, they beat USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, and Creighton.
Okay, so when we go back and we look at the regular season, right? They played 3 great programs in the regular season. That's not a lot. And I'm not saying that them beating those teams is not good enough, but when you only play like 3 or 4 of them out of being at that time 31-0, that's 1/10 of your games.
We just said? This is 8 games.
So
this is 8 of their 31 games.
No, I'm aware. I'm talking about regular season, not the bracket, not the 4 bracket teams.
Okay, so out of their non-conference schedule,
yeah, they played 4 teams.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess they played 7 or less non-conference games. One. Okay,
like,
I'm not gonna.
Who is Dexter?
Dixie State.
Oh, Dixie State.
Realistically,
I don't even.
Okay, here's the thing.
That's my thing.
No. Time out. This season, so you got into it late. This season was freaking weird because half of the country would not schedule non-conference games against the other half of the country because they didn't want to do travel and all this crap. You can see how many of their games got canceled right here. You know, whether that was before or after. Realistically, they're lucky to have... Okay, so their conference started with this San Francisco game. So they played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 non-conference games. That's probably more than 95% of the country in terms of non-conference games. I know that they basically bought 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 4 of them. But games against Kansas, Auburn, West Virginia, Iowa, and Virginia were not bye games. So
I'm not saying that.
Majority of them, they basically outside of those games where they played against other big teams, they pretty much were just trying to get games against anyone they could, because otherwise the situation, I'm gonna liken it. Obviously, they're on 2 completely different levels, but the SDSU season this year, SDSU played no games between December 5th and January 8th. You don't want that to happen. That's a huge, and that wasn't because SDSU went on COVID pause. That's because they could find nobody to play. They actually did play one game in there. They found a D2 school to come up to Brookings and get their shit beat in on January 2nd. But that's what I'm saying. This year was weird. Normally scheduling doesn't look like this, where you play, back-to-back games against Northwestern State or something like that. Realistically, if you can play five, it was only 4, I guess, but Auburn's also an SEC team. If you can play 5 power conference teams in your non-con, that's as many as a power conference team's probably going to play. It is what it is. But continue. Yeah. Realizing that this year was weird for the non-conference scheduling. Literally outside of what your league or your conference locked in, and then your tournament play, you had almost no control over who you were playing. It was basically whoever was healthy at the time.
I just think that when it came down to it, they were tested 2 games in a row, and it demoralized them because I don't think they had been tested like the way they were tested. And I think that's the thing.
I don't think it demoralized them. I'm gonna go against you again here. Consider this for a second. That UCLA game against a UCLA team that was as hot as anybody in the country, because it felt like Johnny Juzang could have shot from the moon and would have swished it every time. Right? UCLA shot, we saw UCLA shot like 50-something% from the field in the game, 58% from the field in the game. That's something Gonzaga does to people. And it was happening to them. Yet they did not fucking blink. It was a closer game than they were used to, but they did not ever look not confident, or they never acted like they were going to lose that game. That says a lot about the coaching staff, that even though they were playing these blowout games against, even power conference opponents, the coaching staff was like, hey, here's what's going to happen. Eventually we're going to play a close game somewhere down the line. Here's the way we have to react. Here's what's going to happen. This team, I don't think, was demoralized by the fact they were playing close games. I think that's a weak mindset to think that these guys are not capable of playing close games.
Well, I don't think they were. I don't think, again, I think it's my perception of just the Gonzaga team, and maybe it's just I genuinely didn't like their attitude, but when it got down to it, I don't think they should have beat UCLA.
And that's fine. That's the thing. You think that because UCLA played so well, yes?
Yeah.
Gonzaga still won that game. Straight up, they won the game.
They did.
Because they didn't blink. They were prepared for a moment that they were going to play a good team in crunch time, and it was going to be close, and they didn't fucking blink.
Okay, and then what is the excuse for Monday?
Well, you didn't let me get to that point yet. You're still stuck on this UCLA game that they clearly got.
No,
past.
That's fine. Let's move on. I want to get to the actual game. Let's get to the Baylor.
This is 100% after thinking about it. I'm glad we had this extra 24 hours to think rather than recording this yesterday. You know what I really think happened?
What?
Gonzaga, I couldn't think of an accurate comparison in a different sport or even basketball, really, other than maybe the thing that I could think of, right, was maybe the 2012 NBA Finals that had that really young Thunder team against the Heat with all those veterans, right? It was a contrast in styles where both teams very good, but one team is more of a finesse team, and one team is more of we're going to play physical, and you're going to have to match our physicality for 40 minutes to really have a chance to beat us. And Gonzaga and Oklahoma City are that finesse team, and the more veteran Heat, and then the Baylor Bears the other night would fit that model of being the more physical team. Gonzaga won all those games by doing kind of their thing, they basically just out executed everybody, right? I think we can agree with that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you're beating teams just based on the fact that you're out executing them, you're a really damn good basketball team. Because realistically, somewhere along the way, someone should have been like, yeah, we're going to stop what they do, right? But no one was capable of it up until Monday night. But Baylor was a team that was like, we're going to get really up into you. We're going to try to make you uncomfortable because we understand you're a finesse team. And while we're a team that makes shots too, but we have guys, we have Mark Vital and Flo Thamba, and then Davian Mitchell is one of the best defenders I've ever seen in my life. The dude is an animal. They were easily the more physical team. I think in terms of the styles of play, rather, I think it was just simply a very bad matchup for Gonzaga, and that's what it is. That's why I think if you play that game a lot of times, I still think Baylor probably wins. You know, if they play 10 times, I'm going to bet Baylor wins at least 6 of them.
You know, we're talking about like teams, like, because I hadn't thought about another team, right? I just hadn't thought about another team. But when you brought it into my head, the first team that came into my mind that I compare Gonzaga to that I really, really hated was that undefeated Patriots team.
That's another good one.
They remind me a lot of that team.
Honestly, not so unlike the Chiefs team we just saw lose in the Super Bowl either.
Exactly.
The Chiefs lost to a much more physical Buccaneers team that are you gonna then go say, yeah, that like the fucking Chiefs team this year that went 15-1 or whatever, or that Patriots team that was 16-0, are they not historically great? No, they are historically great. They just ran into a team that was much better prepared for the way that game had to be played. And that is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Can we then
when we get down to the actual Baylor Gonzaga game, to me, Baylor just came out and played like they wanted. They controlled the game's pace.
Yep, they played that game on their terms.
Yes.
And realistically, if you're playing the game on your terms, you should win that game.
Yeah.
That's why Baylor went 27-2 before the national title game, and Gonzaga went 31-0. Those are both incredible records. I don't know if you did not tune in early enough to see the quick stat they gave right before tip-off. This was this matchup of, at the time, it was 27-2 and 31-0. The highest combined winning percentage in an NCAA title game all time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, see, I didn't know that.
So I think that's another thing. These two teams were both great. That got lost a little bit along the way. I know I have a tweet up here where we were going to get to it. I will say we can now kind of start to transition. I think we've talked enough about Gonzaga. Maybe I had a breakthrough in your mind comparing Gonzaga not like it to other teams that it's not like they weren't good enough to be there. It's just that the conflicting style was something that I'm not going to say they weren't prepared for, but they weren't used to.
Yeah.
And Baylor just played it better. That's as simple as that. I will say this as well. So much, again, there's just a lot of Gonzaga slander. Again, if you want to critique the game, go ahead. But to somehow like take this and be like, Mark Few is a coach that, can't win the big one, and like that tells a lot about him as a coach. Mark Few did not need to win this game. This is a tweet straight from Mid-Major Madness again. Mark Few did not need to win this game to prove he is one of the best coaches in the game and a future Hall of Famer. He does not ever need to win a championship in a 6-game single elimination tournament to prove that. I think that, that honestly is a incredibly just strong and factual statement. This Mid-Major Madness got a reply from Seth Davis, who's one of the premier analysts in college hoops and said, honestly, not worth engaging. Those who say otherwise, thank you for what you do. Mark Few's a great coach, and he runs a great program at Gonzaga. They just ran into a buzzsaw on Monday night. That quite simply is what it is. And so we have to say it. They were an incredibly entertaining team to watch. If you somehow found yourself watching a Gonzaga game this year and you weren't just enamored by the way they move the ball, share the ball, and just kind of cut people up with the extreme precision, you must not like basketball, because this team's a very entertaining team to watch. I don't care what you say.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think Mark Few, he is a great coach. He is a very good coach. I like his demeanor. I like his knowledge. He seems like a very good mentor, coach to have and just to play for. So I do see Gonzaga being a good team again next year, depending on who's going to be on that team. I assume Suggs might go to the NBA draft.
Suggs is almost certainly going to the NBA. Kispert's a senior. He's going to go to the NBA.
I hate Kispert. That guy can go fly a kite. He looks like the biggest tool in the world. I just have to say that.
And there was a reason during the regular season he was named first team All-American. The dude's a really good basketball player and shoots the ball as well as anyone I've seen shoot the ball at the college level. It was very disappointing to me, however. It didn't feel like he played anywhere close to his level during really any of this NCAA tournament. I don't know if that was just... I know a lot of true shooters talk a lot about if they play college ball and then play in these NFL arenas. The depth perception obviously is really weird, because obviously an NFL stadium is not meant to house a basketball court. And so the background is miles away and stuff like that. And it just is very disorienting. But he did not shoot well. He played, as well as you probably would expect him to on the defensive end. But it was a little disappointing to not see Kispert play a little better. And now we get into it. We've shown this picture several times as it's been updated. The big bracket that was put on the side of the Marriott Hotel in downtown Indianapolis, it is complete. That nice BU logo right in the middle. As the Baylor Bears take it home. The all-tournament team, as you'd expect, everybody from the Final Four. Johnny Juzang from UCLA, Jalen Suggs and Drew Timme from Gonzaga, and then Davion Mitchell and Jared Butler from Baylor with, where'd I put it? Jared Butler taking home the most outstanding player of the tournament. No real shock there. It was close, I think, after the Final Four game between Butler and Mitchell, but Butler had himself a whale of a game on Monday night, and that kind of set him apart, in my opinion. And obviously,
I actually agree with you. I agree with that statement. I really like Mitchell. I think
Mitchell's going to be a very good NBA player someday. If not right now, I think he should come out. I don't know if he will. He has obviously the defensive mentality to play significant minutes right away, regardless of whether his offensive game is quite where his coach would want it. He's going to be a pest. And
he reminds me a lot of a Kawhi Leonard type, where it's his defense is going to be his strong suit for many, for his first probably 5 seasons.
This was the comp that I heard the other day. I was trying to think just now. His comp is a better shooting Marcus Smart.
That's a really good comp.
And Marcus Smart is a hell of a ball player.
He is.
And to think that Davion Mitchell is that smaller guard who can probably play 1 through small ball 3 in terms of what he's going to guard. and he's just going to make your life absolutely miserable on the offensive end. I'm excited to watch him in the future.
Out of this one, I will say this. I really hope Johnny Juzang gets a chance in the NBA. I think
I think they'd be incredibly, stupid not to. Somebody's got to take a chance on him because that dude is a fucking walking bucket.
Yo, I love this term, by the way, that I just heard in this tournament, and he's a gamer. I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I love that little, like, all these boys are gamers, man. They play the game well. It's awesome. I love it.
I'm also very excited to see Jalen Suggs at the next level. I really think, he had a very good regular season. I think he was second team All-America. But he really even elevated himself further during the tournament. He showed that he's going to be able to play both ways, I think, pretty consistently in the NBA. That's going to be exciting. Whether you like Gonzaga or not, right? If he's on the Lakers, I think you'll grow to like Gonzaga.
No, I'll go to like him. I'll still hate Gonzaga. There's a difference.
Alrighty. Now we're going to focus more on the Baylor side of things. This is something that even for someone like me who followed college basketball as closely as I did and as closely as I always do, this kind of got mucked around in my mind a little bit. I got a little too enamored maybe with Gonzaga's, the actual result of Gonzaga's schedule and the record, right? If you take out the fact that Baylor had to sit out two separate 2 to 3 week spans for COVID pausing, especially that one toward the end of the season, this team's probably undefeated too.
Yeah.
Because their first loss was to Kansas at Kansas in one of the, regardless of whether there's fans there or not, one of the toughest places to play in all of college basketball at Fog Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence. They lose that game 4 days after they come back from having 3 weeks of no basketball activities, right? Even though they had a game earlier in the week, but it was a warm up against an Iowa State team that's very bad, and Kansas was on their hot streak at that time, right? So they lose a close one to Kansas on the road, and then they lose a game in the Big 12 tournament where Cade Cunningham, the prospective number 1 overall pick in the draft, went absolutely batshit insane in the second half. You take away those, and that was still, only 2 weeks maybe after they'd come back from the pause. Not even. They weren't quite at full strength yet. This team was about that close to also entering this tournament undefeated. And so I mentioned it a little earlier. I think we have to remember this tournament. One, for the fact that Baylor won it and beat the team who is truly undefeated, and that's a big accomplishment. But to think of either Baylor or Gonzaga as anything other than historically great would be a disservice to either of the programs and what they did this season, I think.
True. I remember when we first started the podcast and you wanted to get me into college ball.
Yeah, at that time, both of them were undefeated.
Exactly.
They were undefeated.
They were far and away better than everybody else.
And they proved that.
And I said, yep. And I said, well, it sounds like a national championship game. And it was. And I remember the first game I watched was the Baylor KU game. And I was so hyped because I was like, the first game I ever watched is going to be an upset. I thought it was the coolest thing. Baylor, yeah, without COVID restrictions or COVID pauses, I do think that they go undefeated. And that would have been an insane game. The one loss, if you could imagine, is so.
Yeah, could you imagine if we would have entered the game with a guarantee that one of these two teams would be the first team since that 75, 76 Indiana team to be undefeated? That would have been actually perfect. There in a year, and this thing I think got swept under the rug with how dominant Baylor was on Monday night. Even though Gonzaga got their doors blown off early and the game was kind of, it felt over relatively early on, we could not have asked for a better matchup in the national title game. That
No.
could have been probably UCLA. That could have been literally anybody else against Baylor. And if Baylor plays like that, they're not losing. I saw another tweet that I didn't pull up, but I thought it was very funny. The thing that Baylor did steal from UCLA's game against Gonzaga in the Final Four was they chose to employ the strategy of making every shot. And yeah, that's very, very hard to counter, especially when a team is as good as Baylor is. You know, I know they ended up only shooting around 50% for the game from three, but did it not feel like they made literally everything from three?
Yeah, it was wild. I felt like every shot they took, I was like, oh, that's in. There's a couple one of them that just went through the net, and I was like, oh, he airballed it, and then like 3 points popped up on the board, and I was like,
the one that I wish I had
hell?
a highlight of from Jared Butler, where it was fairly early in the second half, and Jared Butler pulls up from the fucking logo, and the net didn't even move, dude. Like he just that was pretty indicative of the whole night. Every time Gonzaga, like, I think you got to give credit to Gonzaga for trying to make that push. They made 2 separate pushes where they got it to that like 9 or 10 point range, and then both times it was like the snap of a finger. And I think one time Baylor was like back-to-back threes, and then it was back to 16 or 15, just like that. And the other time, like they locked it in on the defensive end, and Gonzaga couldn't knock it down any further than that. It was just really impressive overall. I thought this was a fun little note. Baylor joined the 2018 Villanova team as the only teams in the modern 64-team bracket era to win both their Final Four and their national title game by 15 points.
That's just a fun fact.
And
I don't even have a comment for that.
I mentioned this Villanova team to you kind of offhandedly. I'll say this was probably my biggest miss of the tournament, where I thought Gonzaga had the potential. I didn't say they were going to, but I said they had the potential to like blow out UCLA. I still think they do. It's just that, again, UCLA played an exceedingly great game. This Villanova team beat the number 2 seed Oklahoma by 44 points in the Final Four.
Oh yeah, yep,
it was one of the worst games I've ever watched in my life. Buddy Hield, the star of that Oklahoma team. Fun fact. Another little fun fact to wrap everything as we're starting to wrap up here. The national title game averaged just short of 17 million viewers, which is the most watched basketball game, college or pro, since Game 6 of the 2019 NBA Finals. That would have been the Warriors-Raptors, right?
Correct.
Fun fact. And so unless you have anything you'd like to go back and revisit, I think this is where we can start to wrap everything up. It was really fun for me. First of all, I guess,
yeah.
Do you have anything you want to go back and revisit very quickly?
I would just like to say that for my first tournament since we were very young.
Yes.
It was a great tournament to watch.
It really was.
I know that tournaments like this probably are few and far between with how exciting.
No, that's
like
pretty much right on par.
And so, like I said, it was great. I'm excited. Next season, everybody, I'll be full college swing when it rolls up. I'll be.
You are committed now. Is this what I'm hearing?
Yeah. I am ready to go. I'm ready to see some of these guys in the NBA. I like some of their game. Now that my college season has wrapped up, I can now invest the rest of my basketball time into the pros and seeing where some of these guys fit on those teams.
Hey, if nothing else, right?
It was really good.
Now when the NBA draft comes around, you're going to be able to put some actual like games and faces to the names you hear called.
Yeah, and like I once we get like a full list of maybe like the top prospects who have declared for the draft, I will go back and look at and see where I think these guys fit, because now, like I'm wearing my Lakers hat, it's time for my NBA season to start. But it's exciting. I'm excited for the continued journey of college basketball and the podcast. So that's my comment.
Now, he admitted to me before we started recording this that, and I should have told him, since he is, as it were, a March Madness noob, that he was not aware that the tournament isn't truly over until they air One Shining Moment at the end of the broadcast. And whether he enjoys this or not, I always enjoy One Shining Moment, because it's kind of, in a way, it's just like the time capsule of the tournament. It's a really quick, easy way to go back and kind of relive all the fun stuff we've seen over the last 3 weekends. And so, as this tweet says, we say thank you to Indianapolis and Indiana as a whole for hosting the rebound year of the NCAA tournament. It was absolutely incredible to watch, and now we get to watch One Shining Moment to send off the podcast. This will be fun. We're going to get copyright struck on YouTube, but it's fine.
What an emotional video.
I love One Shining Moment. I know I'd said it beforehand, but it's really just the perfect way to wrap things up. And the biggest thing I saw in there, you might, I assume you caught it, number 4 from Grand Canyon, Oscar Freire. We got the devastating news that after Grand Canyon lost to Iowa in the first round, he went home and was unfortunately in a fatal car accident. So it was very, very cool to see him get his One Shining Moment, and obviously, rest in peace to that young man. Terrible to see. But great tournament. It was very fun to go through this journey with you, brother.
Yes.
And now we look forward to, as Denver said, the NBA season is now reaching kind of its peak. I know we're in the kind of the home stretch in that area. Do you have any idea when the playoffs actually start? Is it like a normal start where they typically get underway that last week of April, or is it further out because of the late start?
I think it's further out. I think it's in May. Because I saw the play-in games start like May 14th.
Gotcha. Yeah. Anyway, so obviously we're gonna devote a little more time for me for sure, watching some NBA games where I can. In a wild turn of events, I've actually watched probably more regular season baseball in the first week of that season than I have in a very long time. I usually only watch from like September on, when it's the only thing on during the week, except obviously football on the weekends. But I've actually been kind of enjoying that, as strange as it sounds. I'm really not a baseball guy, but something very
that's not for me.
We're not gonna attempt to bring that to the forefront of the pod, because I know Denver's not about that life.
No.
He's way too much about that drama and that action to get into baseball.
Yeah, no, I can't take the slow pitch. Got 800 head shakes before they throw the ball. Like, come on.
What else though? We have Denver says he's going to catch up on Falcon and the Winter Soldier here shortly.
Yes.
So we'll obviously have, our next podcast will probably feature some sort of discussion about the first 3 or 4 episodes of that as we come down the stretch, because we believe that is only an 8 episode kind of
6.
Or sorry, 6. Yes, I had 6 in my head, and for some reason I still said 8. That is, thank you for keeping me on track. So a 6 episode thing. So we'll have our typical, kind of like mid mid
season.
mid-season, I guess. Yeah, is it really a season? I was trying to think of a better word than season.
I mean, it's a season. It's a season of episodes.
The mid series. There we go. The mid, because it's only
the first season of Grey's Anatomy only had 8 episodes.
Yeah, but
so,
there was multiple seasons of that. This is like a one thing. This is like a one-time thing, right? So
maybe, I don't know. Kevin Feige was like, maybe all these seasons will get up 2 seasons. I don't know.
And during I think it was during the national title game, we saw, or at least I saw, my first peek at the Loki trailer.
Oh yeah.
And so now I was reminded that as soon as Falcon and the Winter Soldier's done, we have Loki on the heels of that.
And then at the end of Loki, we'll have, I know it's not Marvel, but we'll have the new Suicide Squad. If you haven't seen the Red Band trailer of that, please go watch it.
I have, but I'm not. I don't know. I was not really a DC guy to begin with, and then the original Suicide, or not. I shouldn't say the original. I don't think it was the original, but the Suicide Squad from
2016. Yeah,
I was about to say 15, but. It really didn't trip my trigger. I didn't think it was that great of a movie. So,
well, I don't know. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you do know. I don't know. But it's directed by James Gunn, who made the Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Yeah, we all know how big a fan I am of those movies too.
So,
they're okay.
I think it's gonna be a good movie. And then John Cena's getting his own show. Everything seems to be going wild. At some point, we have to do a NBA or NFL off-season podcast before the draft, because that's coming up in 2 weeks. The NFL draft is going to be here.
Yeah, it's the end of April, so we 3 weeks or less.
It's insane.
It's probably 3 weeks from tomorrow, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah,
probably. So by the time you guys are seeing this,
much to do.
Okay, we thought this was just kind of we thought maybe we'd have a little lull after the NCAA tournament was over. Heck nah, baby. We're in this content cycle. We got all sorts of shit to talk about.
Because we went over did we go over the NFL free agency type thing? I know we did that.
We did NFL free agency for the first, week and a half that it was live, I believe. And then we did the NBA trade deadline stuff. That was definitely an episode.
Oh my God. Life is wild. We'll get it to you. My work schedule's changing, so we're gonna have to discuss.
Where might we get this to these people?
Oh, you can get this podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/Dierks and Denver Pod.
That's actually not factual. Not factual. We are not partnered with YouTube, so therefore we don't get the special URL. You have to go the old-fashioned way and type in the search bar.
Okay, Dierks and Denver Podcast. Go onto YouTube, do that. You can find us on Spotify. Spotify, the lovely listening app for people who have headphones on and don't like to look at our faces. You can find us there. I think our voices sound pretty good.
As well as Google Podcasts, Overcast, basically anything short of Apple Podcasts, you can find us on, baby. Dierks and Denver Podcast.
You didn't let me finish. I was gonna come in with that.
I'm sorry. I thought you were gonna move on. I'm very sorry. I ruined his thunder.
Oh my God! And then if you want to talk to us on Twitter, twitter.com. Search us. I don't know if we have a special URL on there.
Twitter.com/Dierks Denver Pod.
Yes, we're on there quite frequently. Dierks is great at sending out tweets. I am not good about posting tweets. But I will respond. Dierks will respond. We're happy. We're in a good mood. Let's wrap it up. Take it home. One more shining moment for us.
Take me home, country roads. You already know, folks. We absolutely love you for being here. It was a fun episode. We're now done with college basketball. I'm shedding a tear. You can probably see it in the cam. Whoa. Not cool.
I didn't know if you were going to catch that. I said it so lightly.
I didn't spend all this money on headphones for me not to be able to catch your dumbass comments. But folks, you already know how it is. Wherever you are, wherever you're going, thank you for joining us today. We'll catch you next time. See ya.